Gen X, not so much. I mean, they're willing to invest in something. I mean, who cares about the environment? Who cares if, let all the oil flow into the ocean, and, they'll invest in it.
Hey everybody, this is the House of Ways and Means, and we are here to share more about the generations. The last video we spoke about the baby boomers, and this video we would like to focus on the Generation X. Yes, so this cohort, their birth years are from 1960s to about 1980, and they're about 40 million in population size.
Right, so back in the mid-60s to about 1980, what was happening in the country was you had a lot going on with the civil rights movement. There was some high-profile assassinations related to that of politicians and civil rights leaders. Along with that, there was the ending of the Cold War that was going on with Russia. There were some high-profile scandals, political scandals like Watergate. And I think that was really happening because of the onset of a lot of different technologies. And something that I remember from when I was young was there were a lot of those hidden camera prank shows. Well, they weren't using those hidden cameras just for making pranks. People were being caught with bugs, being hidden in houses. There were things like hidden cameras catching people on tape. Since they were born in this point in time, they were children kind of seeing these things happening. And so, when you see those kind of things happening around you, especially with people you're supposed to trust, like the government, how do you think that impacts you and in your mind and your way of thinking at that age?
At that age, they weren't quite sure what was happening. It made them feel like they could not trust anyone. And this is why the Gen Xers are known to be very cynical. They value transparency because it's something that they weren't brought up getting from, politicians and all these different avenues. So they had to work through a lot of those distrustful scenarios so that they can become the people they are today in the workforce.
They also had some specific challenges for their generation as well in their home lives. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I don't know if you touched on it in the last video that we did, but in regards to the baby boomers and the traditionalists, they lost their jobs. Jumping forward to the time frame of when the Gen Xers were born, that's when they experienced a loss in their jobs. What also happened were divorces. There were a lot of divorces at that time. So the Gen Xers became latchkey kids. They had to take care of themselves. They became self-reliant. And let's say the family did not divorce, in the chance that they did not experience a divorce, both parents still worked. So they were at home by themselves. But what that did is it helped them become a stronger generation. They were able to be more practical. They recognized that because of the separation of their parents, which led to divorce, they did not want that for their kids. They made sure that they created a work-life balance. They did not want to be like the boomers that worked until they dropped. They wanted to make sure that they were home to spend time with their kids.
And so carrying that forward, Gen Xers, they, with the level of independence that they have, they don't really care for micromanagement. They also are kind of not big on authority. They really, like as you said, they value a work-life balance, but I think what it really comes down to is they like their freedom. They feel like, hey, we have education ourselves, we can handle these tasks you give us. You give me a task and let me work on it at my pace, whatever my pace might not be the next employee's pace. but just trust that I'll get it done. Have some faith in me and let me do it the way I want to do it without you standing over my shoulder. And, so what if I have to take a Friday off here or there, or I might want to spend a little more time working from home or whatever it may be. My value is not measured by how many numerical hours I sit here in the office in the cubicle, making small talk in the cafeteria with these people who get on my nerves. Just let me work with my process that is best for me. So.
And another thing to add to that is that their performance in the workplace, if they didn't feel like they were valued, then they underperformed. So that speaks to what you say, by feeling like they're being watched by a helicopter supervisor, it makes them disinterested in really performing the way that they really would like to.
And Gen Xers aren't the type to, find a job and work there 30 years. I mean, they'll do some job hopping. And, that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that they don't care about the work that they do, but they really value their happiness more so than the end result of them just attaining a high position in a position where they're miserable. So they really care about their impact in the company, but also what the company does for them and how they can best manage their life outside of work. So, let's talk a little bit about the financial position that Gen Xers are in now. We talked a little bit previously about how the baby boomers didn't quite save up enough of the money that they made during their careers to be able to retire comfortably in the retirement community in Florida, as a lot of people imagine a retirement to be. And so, more and more of them, just based on the sheer volume of them as well, a lot of them are heading into retirement with not enough funds. So when you can't afford a home health nurse and you get ill, who's going to be stuck taking care of you? It's going to be your kids. Now also, if having to take care of your parents isn't enough, well, you've got your kids who are dealing with very high educational costs.
Yeah.
The Gen Xers were really kind of the first group that had to deal with kind of educational costs that were getting out of control. And so they are trying to help their kids not be in that same position. So on one end, they're taking care of their parents. On the other end, they're paying for their kids to go to college. So that creates a difficult financial position. Once upon a time, when I spoke about how you could work for 30 years for a company, what would happen at that company at the end is you'd get a pension. So you'd clock a certain number of years, and then that would determine kind of the level of pension that you get, and you just get your pension and ride that thing out. The position they got caught in. A lot of these pension plans and these defined contribution plans, which is essentially you work, and as you work, you contribute a certain amount of your paycheck to the company's benefit manager, who would then take that money, invest it for you, and just make sure it reached a certain point so when you retired, you'd be able to get this guaranteed amount. Yeah, until for as long as you may live. But that didn't happen for the Gen Xers because a lot of these pension plans became really underfunded, and what that means is that they weren't managed well enough to be able to have enough money in them to pay out all the obligations that they had. So they essentially became Ponzi schemes where the people who were paying into it, that money was just being taken out immediately and paid to the people who needed the benefits who had already retired. And so a lot of them ended up just closing altogether. So they closed the pension plans to new investors. So when you are no longer able to just hand a part of your paycheck to the company and just have them invest it for you, then who's stuck doing the investing? You are. But it's tough if you don't have any financial education. It's tough to be put in that position. Another interesting note is that the Gen Xers, they have kind of been working through the tech bubble, which was probably traumatic for them if they lost money. Then the big time recession we had in the late 2000s. Those kind of situations have really scared them. So they're risk takers because they got heavily invested in those things that were bubbles. Also, they aren't quite their parents, where some of the baby boomers and the late traditionalists, where they were, they had a strong belief in certain causes. They were big on anti-war. They were big on equality, and they had these things that was kind of like, we really believe in this, so much so that if it's something that we don't believe in, we're not going to invest in. So, a lot of baby boomers, they care about socially responsible investing. They care about activism. Gen X, not so much. I mean, they're willing to invest in something. I mean, who cares about the environment? Who cares? Let all the oil flow into the ocean, and they'll invest in it. But it's really important that they get that financial education to fight against that and really be willing to say, I need help, which is kind of counterintuitive for them, as independent as they are and as agile and crafty as they had to become growing up. But I think it's important for them to be able to say, I could use some help in this area.
Another area that they could possibly use help in is, I spoke about the divorce rates and how that could affect the family. And so it would be at this point that it's critical for Gen Xers, couples, to go to counseling, because you want to make sure you do what you can so you can maintain that family system that you have been working so hard to maintain. And that's one of the things that I've seen in the clients that I work with, how the generational historical events have affected their relationship. And I recently read a study where if you were a child and your parents were divorced, you are 30% more likely to be divorced as well. And so just wanted to add that tidbit in there. If we're giving tips on things that the Gen Xers should do, I would say from a psychological standpoint, that's definitely an area they should look into.
All right, so I think that's about it for the Gen Xers. We have one more video to go, and I know you guys can't wait for that one. I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say who it is, but I know you're ready. So if you like this content, I just want you to go ahead and click that bell, give us a like, subscribe, comment down below, let us know what you think, and we will see you all next time.